Hey, folks. How's it going, everyone? I'm doing great. The aircraft I want to talk about today is 20 meters long and can carry only 2, maybe 3 people, max. Still, it costs a whopping $2 billion. With that kind of money, you could have bought no less than 7 Airbus A380s back in the day, as I mentioned in that previous episode. But, hold on, if you turned into a locksmith, the first Emirates A380 was up for sale for just $41 million. That means one unit of the plane we're discussing today costs a staggering 48 times the value of the first Emirates aircraft. Impressive, right? No, it's not the stealth bomber from Northrop Grumman. It's simply the world's most expensive aircraft, the Louis Peretti. Why is it so expensive, you ask? Well, that's not today's video. That's a whole other story. Anyhow, let me give you a little background on this hero. Back in the 70s, the world was amidst the Cold War, right? At any moment, the conflict could escalate, with the United States and the Soviet Union potentially bombing enemy countries. And as you know, Russia is the largest country in the world today, but back then, the Soviet Union was even bigger. So, depending on where the Americans needed to strike, they'd be exposed to Soviet radar for a long time. Hence, they needed an aircraft that was radar invisible. Basic lesson here, okay? Radars work somewhat like this: they send out radio waves, and if there's an aircraft passing by, these waves bounce off the plane and reflect back to the antenna. This system identifies the echo and gives an idea of where the aircraft is and where it's heading. But in the 70s, designers learned to create aircraft that either absorbed these waves or reflected them elsewhere, away from the antenna. In theory, the plane ends up being radar invisible. The designs of these planes were so top secret that not even intelligence agencies like the CIA and KGB knew about them. They came in various shapes, some were like black triangles with little lights flying around. You know where they were tested? Over at Area 51, the secret base near Las Vegas. Why is Area 51 so famous? Supposedly, it hides UFOs. Many of these aircraft were black triangles with little lights flying around. I won't say much, I'll just let the dots connect. Gotta call Mulder, right? Now, back to our aircraft. In December 1977, the first F-117 took off, an aircraft by Lockheed Martin that was radar invisible and eventually led to the F-117 Nighthawk. These fighters proved that you could create an aircraft practically invisible to radar. And, as I mentioned, we were still in the midst of the Cold War, and at any time, the United States might need to invade Soviet airspace, drop bombs on Moscow, and escape without radar detection. For such a mission to be effective, they needed a large aircraft that could carry a substantial number of conventional or even nuclear bombs. Thus, in 1979, the ultra-secret project named Aurora was born. 2 teams formed for the project, on one side, Northrop with Boeing, and on the other, Lockheed Rockwell. To reduce radar detection, both teams decided to create a flying wing. In fact, the Northrop team had an advantage because Northrop had already built flying wings YB-35 and YB-49 back in the 40s. In the end, that experience made a difference, and the United States Air Force chose Northrop's project. Years went by, and the B-2 was designed and redesigned. There was even an incident where a Northrop employee was arrested for trying to sell the aircraft's project to the Soviets. Crazy, right? And so we arrive in 1988, when the U.S. Air Force first showed the aircraft to journalists. Well, at least the front part of it, because it was an ultra-secret project. In July 1989, the North Shopping, or the Spirit aircraft, took its first flight. Initially, the U.S. government planned to purchase 132 of these planes. However, as the 80s rolled on and the Soviet Union started to crumble, facing economic crises, it seemed like the Cold War wouldn't last much longer. So, with dwindling chances of needing to bomb Soviet cities, the number of orders dropped to 75. Then came 1991, the Soviet Union fell, the Berlin Wall came down, and the U.S. government no longer needed the B-2. But they ended up keeping 21 of them. What's the cost of this endeavor, you wonder? According to 1997 estimates, each aircraft cost $737 million to build, which is equivalent to $1.3 billion today, or nearly 8 billion reais. Later, the aircraft were sold to the U.S. government for much less, at $929 million. This was in 1997, which translates to $1.7 million today in 8.8 billion reais. It became more expensive. And I'm talking about 1997, the year it became operational. Can you imagine paying almost 9 million reais for an aircraft? Considering that the United States bought 21 of them, that's nearly 189 million reais for 21 aircraft. Some military aviation experts say that if North